They were in Italy, celebrating a wedding I built, without me. Payments, bookings, problems, because that's what I always did. Until one call changed everything. The payment failed. Again. They're saying it's under your name. And for the first time in my life, I didn't fix it. I just stared at the screen and realized something simple. This wasn't my wedding, so why was I paying for it? My name is Emily Carter. I'm 31 years old, and this happened last summer in Chicago, Illinois. Before we continue, if you enjoy real-life stories where silence speaks louder than revenge, make sure you subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read every single comment. Now let me take you back, because this didn't start in Italy. It started long before they got on that plane. In my family, roles weren't assigned out loud. They just formed. And mine? I was the one who handled things. Quietly. Efficiently. Without recognition. If something needed organizing, I did it. If something went wrong, I fixed it. If something complicated came up, it somehow landed on me. Not because I asked for it, because I never said no. When my sister Ava got engaged, everything became about her. Naturally. That's how it goes. But what wasn't natural was how quickly responsibility shifted. Not to her. Not to her fiancé. To me. Can you just handle this? Can you check that? You're better at these things. And slowly, without a conversation, I became the system behind her wedding. They decided to have the wedding in Italy, a destination wedding. Beautiful, expensive, complicated, and exciting for everyone except me. Because while they were planning outfits, venues, photo shoots, I was managing logistics, emails, contracts, payments, time zones, details no one else wanted to deal with. When travel plans were finalized, everyone was going. My parents, my sister, extended family, friends, and me. You should stay back, my mom said. It'll be easier if someone responsible handles things from here. Not a question, a decision. And somehow, it made sense to them that I would stay behind to manage a wedding I wasn't even attending. I didn't argue, didn't question it, just nodded, because I had been trained to accept this role, to prioritize function over feeling, to be useful, not included. And at the time, it didn't feel wrong. It felt normal. That's the dangerous part. When imbalance feels familiar, you stop recognizing it. The day they left, the house was loud. Suitcases, excitement, last-minute chaos, everyone rushing, everyone smiling, and me, standing there, making sure nothing was forgotten. Tickets printed, bookings confirmed, schedules aligned, watching them leave, for something I built, but wasn't part of. When the house emptied, it got quiet, too quiet, and for the first time, I felt it. Not loneliness, but distance, like I wasn't just physically separated, but placed outside something intentionally, still useful, still needed, just not included. A few days later, I started reviewing everything again. Confirmations, payments, vendor details, just routine. Until I noticed something, then something else, then a pattern. Everything was under my name, not shared, not partial, fully mine. Every booking, every contract, every payment. My name, my email, my card, everything. And that's when it hit me. This entire wedding was running through me. But it wasn't mine. Not even a little. The first call came late at night. Panicked. Urgent. Something's wrong with the payment. Can you fix it? And instinctively, I almost said yes, because that's what I always did. But this time, I paused. And that pause changed everything. The second call didn't sound like the first one. The tone had changed. Less confusion. More urgency. Emily, something's not going through. They're saying the payment failed again, and I could hear it in the background. Voices. Stress. Movement. Because for them, this wasn't just a small issue anymore. This was disruption. And for the first time, they weren't speaking to me casually. They were depending on me. Normally, I would have opened my laptop immediately, checked everything, fixed it within minutes, reassured them. But this time, I didn't move. I stayed exactly where I was, listening, thinking. Because something inside me had shifted, and rushing to fix it would have pulled me right back into the same role, the same pattern, the same expectation. And I wasn't sure I wanted that anymore. When I finally opened my laptop, I didn't go straight to the problem. I looked at everything, all the accounts, all the connections, all the payments scheduled, and what I saw wasn't chaos. It was structure, clean, organized, efficient, built by me, maintained by me, controlled by me, and suddenly, that control felt different. Then I saw it, auto payments, running quietly, handling everything before anyone even noticed a problem. Venue deposits, vendor balances, service confirmations, all linked to one place, one source, my card. And that's when the situation became clear. They weren't managing the wedding. The system was. And the system was me. I sat there, staring at the screen. Because this wasn't about fixing something anymore. It was about understanding something. For years, I thought I was just helping. But I wasn't. I was holding everything together. Quietly. Consistently. And no one noticed, because it never broke. I moved my cursor slowly, hovered over the settings. Autopay, on. And without overthinking it, without making it dramatic, I clicked. Off. And just like that, the wedding stopped running. No sound, no alert, no announcement. Just silence. And in that silence, everything shifted. I didn't wait to see what would happen, didn't monitor it, didn't check updates. I just closed my laptop. Because for once, I didn't feel responsible for what came next. And that feeling was unfamiliar, but also freeing. It didn't take long. Another call, then another. Messages, missed calls. Emily, the venue is asking for confirmation. They said they might release the booking. What's going on? And this time, they weren't calm. They weren't expecting a quick fix. They were starting to feel it, the gap. I didn't respond immediately, not out of spite, but out of clarity. Because for the first time, I was seeing everything from the outside. How quickly things unraveled, how dependent everything was on something they never acknowledged. And it wasn't chaos, it was reality, without me holding it together. When I finally replied, it wasn't long, it wasn't emotional, it wasn't defensive, just one message. Simple, clear. It's your wedding. You should be the one handling it. And that sentence did more than any argument ever could, because it wasn't anger, it was truth. If you've ever stopped doing everything for others and watched what happened next, you already understand this moment. Tell me in the comments, would you have done the same? I read every single comment. The first real consequence didn't come from my family. It came from the venue, a formal email, clear, professional, cold. Payment confirmation required within 12 hours or booking will be placed on hold. No emotion, no urgency in tone, just policy. And that's what made it serious. Because systems don't panic, they don't adjust, They don't understand family dynamics. They just follow rules. And for the first time, those rules were no longer being handled quietly in the background. They were visible, direct, and unavoidable. The next call wasn't just urgent. It was tense. "Emily, they're saying we could lose the venue." No more assumptions, no more casual tone. Now there was pressure, expectation, almost blame, like somehow this situation, even now, was still connected to me. And I listened, without interrupting, without reacting. Because this time, I wasn't stepping in to absorb it. I was letting it exist, exactly as it was. Then came the vendors, catering, decor, photography, each one reaching out, not aggressively, just professionally, requesting confirmations, clarifying delays, because payments were no longer guaranteed. And what they didn't know was that the system they were used to had been removed. Quietly, without warning. Because for them, this wasn't chaos. This was interruption. And interruptions require action from the people responsible. For the first time, my sister had to answer those questions, not forward them, not pass them to me, answer them directly. And you could hear it in her voice. Uncertainty, frustration, confusion, because managing something and being part of something are not the same thing. And she was realizing that, in real time, without preparation. There was no backup, no hidden support, no quiet fix happening behind the scenes. Because I hadn't partially stepped back. I had removed the system completely. And without it, everything became manual, visible, complicated. And that's when they understood something they never had to think about before. Nothing was running automatically. It was being run by me. Then reality became financial. Can we just pay it from here? Why is everything connected to your card? Questions started shifting, not just about fixing things, but understanding them. And the answers weren't simple, because convenience, over time, had turned into dependency. And dependency, without awareness, becomes a problem. They had to use their own money, not planned, not structured, immediate, unexpected. And that changes perspective fast, because when something costs you directly, you start paying attention to details, to effort, to the invisible work behind it. And suddenly, what I had been doing for years wasn't invisible anymore. When they called again, it wasn't demanding. It wasn't sharp. It was different, slower, careful. Like they were choosing their words. Because now, they understood something. Not completely, but enough. That this situation wasn't just technical. It was structural. I didn't walk them through it. Didn't guide them step by step. Didn't simplify it. Because that would have undone everything. Instead, I let them figure it out. At their pace. Through their own effort. Because understanding something yourself always hits deeper than being told. By the end of that day, everything had changed. Not the wedding, not the event, but the understanding. They saw it now, not fully, but clearly enough. Who had been managing everything? Who had been carrying the weight? And what happens when that weight is no longer being carried? If you've ever stepped back and watched people realize your value the hard way, you know exactly what this feels like. Tell me in the comments. Would you have stepped back earlier? I read every single comment. By the second day, it wasn't just a problem anymore. It was pressure. Real pressure. The kind that doesn't stay in the background. The kind that starts affecting everything. The venue needed confirmation. The vendors needed payment. Schedules were shifting, and suddenly, the wedding that once felt smooth started feeling unstable, not because something went wrong, but because something stopped working. And for the first time, they weren't calling me as support. They were calling me like I was the solution. When Ava called again, her voice wasn't confident, it wasn't controlled, it was strained. "This is getting out of hand," she said. "No one told me it was this complicated." And I could hear it, the shift, because this wasn't just inconvenience anymore. This was her moment, her wedding. And it wasn't going the way she imagined, because for the first time, she wasn't just the center of attention, she was responsible. Then my mother called. Not to ask, not to request, but to take control. "Just fix it, Emily. You always do." That sentence felt familiar, too familiar, like nothing had changed, like the pattern was still intact, like I was still expected to step in and resolve everything. And for a second, I almost did. Out of habit, out of instinct. But I didn't. Because this time, I saw it clearly. I didn't argue with her, didn't explain myself, didn't justify anything. I just didn't take the role back. And that silence was louder than any response, because they were waiting for me to return to normal, to step back into the system, to restore everything. But I didn't. And that's when they realized this wasn't temporary. Plans started shifting because nothing was running automatically anymore, not by design, but by necessity. Things were delayed, adjusted, reworked, because without structure, everything becomes reactive, and reactive systems don't feel smooth. They feel stressful, unpredictable, heavy. And that's what their wedding became. Not ruined, but no longer effortless. For the first time, they felt it. Not just the work, but the weight, the constant attention, the coordination, the responsibility. All the small things that no one notices until they have to do them. And suddenly, what I had been doing for years wasn't invisible anymore. It was obvious. No one admitted it directly. No one said, "You were doing everything." But you could hear it in the way they spoke, in the pauses, in the tone. Because realization doesn't always come with words. Sometimes it shows up quietly in how people start treating you differently. I didn't fly there, didn't step in, didn't offer help. Not because I didn't care, but because caring doesn't mean carrying everything. And that difference was something I was finally understanding. For the first time in my life, I wasn't fixing. I was observing. And the most important part? The wedding didn't collapse. It still happened. The venue held. The vendors were paid. Everything moved forward, but not the way they imagined. Not smoothly, not effortlessly, because this time, it required effort. Their effort. By the end of it, something had changed. Not just in them, in me. Because I realized something simple. I was never just helping. I was holding everything together. And the moment I stepped back, they finally saw it. Not because I told them, because they experienced it. When they returned, the house felt different again. Not empty this time, not quiet either, but heavier. Like something had shifted while they were gone. Suitcases came in, voices filled the space, but the energy wasn't the same as before they left. There was no excitement, no loud storytelling, no perfect wedding glow, just tired conversations. And I noticed it immediately. Not what they said, but how they said it. Because sometimes, people don't need to explain what changed. You can hear it. Ava didn't come to me right away, which was unusual, because normally, Everything circled back to her. But this time, she stayed quiet, moving around the house, avoiding direct conversation, like she was still processing something. And that told me more than words ever could. Because confidence doesn't disappear without reason. It fades when reality replaces expectation. My mother was the first to approach me, but not the way she used to. Not with instructions, not with expectations. Just slower, more aware. And when she looked at me, it wasn't the usual glance. It was intentional. Like she was seeing something she hadn't noticed before, or maybe something she had ignored. "Thank you." She said it quietly. Something she had never said before, almost carefully, like the word itself felt unfamiliar. And I didn't respond immediately. Not because I was upset, but because I understood something in that moment. That word wasn't about gratitude. It was about realization. Because people don't thank you for things they think are expected. They thank you when they finally understand the effort behind it. But timing matters. And this came late. Not wrong, not fake, just late. Because recognition after absence doesn't erase the years before it. It just confirms them. And I accepted that, calmly, without needing more. Because I wasn't waiting for this anymore. Later that evening, Ava sat across from me. No audience, no noise, just us. And she said something simple. "We didn't realize how much you were doing until you stopped." Not dramatic, not emotional, just honest. And sometimes, honesty without defense means more than any apology. I didn't say, "You should have known." Didn't list everything I had done, didn't explain the years of imbalance, because I didn't need to. They had already lived it, felt it, experienced it, and that kind of understanding doesn't come from explanation. It comes from absence. Something had changed, not dramatically, not overnight, but permanently. Because once people see your value clearly, they can't go back to not seeing it. They might not say it every time, but it stays. In how they speak, in how they ask, in how they treat you. And for the first time, I didn't step back into the same role. Not completely. I still helped, but differently, with boundaries, with choice, not expectation, because there's a difference between being supportive and being responsible for everything, and I finally understood that. They didn't change everything, but they changed enough. And I didn't need more than that, because the real shift was mine. I stopped being the invisible system, stopped carrying what wasn't mine, stopped fixing things automatically, and in the end, I didn't need to prove my value. I just needed to stop being the system they depended on. If this story felt real to you, share it with someone who needs to hear this. And tell me in the comments, have you ever stopped doing everything for others just to see what happens? I read every single comment, and there's another story waiting for you on your screen. I'll see you there.